Is our unit at Starship satisfied that they can look after the heart kids that are hanging around, potentially needing surgery at the moment? Are we happy that we're going to look after them and there's not going to be anything?
Yeah, as I said, I mean, it's not an ideal situation, but, and I take the point from the back that, why is 50 okay? But as things stand, the list is in control. The forward planning over the next 3 or 4 months makes me think it's going to stay that way. This last week we've just had 8 newborn babies in the last 7 days, like 8 of the 60 or whatever for the year, so the optimist in me thinks that it means we won't have any more for 3 or 4 weeks. But it's not an ideal situation, but I don't think it's dire. Naveen is very good. He will be going back to the program in India that we've trained him for, but he's doing a lot of the more straightforward surgery, and as I say, we've had people coming over from Melbourne to give Kirsten the odd week off. She's not here, but she loves operating. I mean, it's the hard thing with her is to actually get her to stop for a few days, and so although it's probably not what she was anticipating doing at this stage of her career, it's something that she's actually enjoying doing. The hard thing is when things don't go right, when there are cancellations and that kind of stuff. So it's important that we can protect the surgical staff from that sort of stuff.
Just on top of that, who's covering her when she goes to the islands? That's coming up too.
So she's going to the islands on her annual leave. Right. So she's not going as part of hospital time.
Right. So who's taking up her spot?
Yeah. So there'll be somebody coming over from Melbourne to cover her for that. Yeah. So that's not part of her hospital time. We're not sending her to the islands. That's her annual leave. That's what she does. That's why I said she does operating. That's what she does.
Somebody covering her.
But any management of any organisation has a responsibility to cover essential services when people have annual leave, because every single one of us needs to take annual leave, and even if it's a husband's holiday and you're going to do some surgery on
I think that's another thing that heart families worry about, is that we're quite aware and we're quite attached to our surgeons, and we don't want to see them burn out. So when we know that the essential services will be covered by somebody else, then I think we can all kind of relax that we're not going to get a really tired surgeon when we do need them. So that kind of communication.
How do you think we Starship and or Heart Kids can communicate that to families, do you think?
This conversation is good, so we know that, we don't really know that there's a well-established relationship with Melbourne where they are covering her. That kind of makes you feel okay, because she's not working 7 days a week and, in total burnout, because every time I've seen her, it has been really busy, and we're elective, so, we get pushed for acute and often, and I can see it on all the staff. They're all disappointed that they're letting us down, but because it's so busy, it literally is so busy, because you've got your elective and your acute coming in at the same time. So, we didn't know that those relationships are robust with Melbourne, and and it's also good to hear that other hospitals run like this. Like, they have a couple of surgeons, and like Brisbane, for instance, is a good example where they're doing it the same, and they're calling them help when they need it. That kind of stuff is information that just kind of puts you a little bit at ease, because we only see what we see and we can only assume the rest, which is no good for anybody.
Can I just ask, for kids that aren't urgent and they could just keep getting pushed out, at the moment will they just not make that list, so those numbers aren't getting bigger, and then do we just come back in another year and they come again?
No, we're not making decisions about
you don't have someone to do it right now, so you don't want to put them on because it won't be done within 4 months.
The only kids that we're doing that to are kids in the islands, actually. So we've put a halt on any elective transfers from the islands through till next year. So
it's not having the decision whether we decide to operate now or not. The lack of surgeons isn't coming into that.
No. Yeah. Yeah, and as I say, once you're put on the list, then the ministry stipulation is within 4 months. It used to be within 6 months, it's within 4 months. And I think we will meet that 4 months criteria, excepting possibly over Christmas. I suspect over Christmas, New Year, we may find a few people who, you know, will put on that routine list in late August, who end up waiting through to the end of January, beginning of February, just because of the way things shut down, because staff take leave and you know, that 3 weeks before Christmas is always just a bit chaotic with everything that needs to be done.
Just a question about staffing on 23B. In our experience, coming in and out, we've gone from a massive pile of senior nurses who take on anything and everything to a lot of junior nurses now. Is there anything in the balance to make sure that there's a good coverage with senior and junior staff coming in and learning the ropes? You kind of look around as a parent, you're like, I don't actually know any of you anymore. Like, where have they all gone? Burnout is quite a big problem, so what's been done to alleviate that for the staff?
Yeah. I did have, Sophie got me some occupancy figures, which I couldn't put on the slide, unfortunately. It's too technically challenged to do that. But the ward occupancy is fairly high. The average occupancy runs at about 85%, I want to say, of the 22 beds. And we're sort of, the way the nursing model works, we kind of funded for 17 of those 22 beds. So that you know, the nursing model is a bit stretched. In terms of nurses coming and going, you know, I don't honestly think that it's any different to how it was. We don't have a hugely high nursing turnover.
Maybe not now, but my partner used to work on 23B.
Yeah.
And in 2 years, there was something like 18 or 19 staff go to other areas in Starship or away overseas or just completely burn out, and she's not working in 23B anymore because of burnout. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a concern when you're a parent coming in with your child. You want to know that the staff are competent, and it's not a junior nurse running off to always, nothing against them, they have to learn, but running off to always ask someone more senior how to do their job, or going, your kid's quite complicated, so you know, you'll be right for the night. It is a little bit concerning.
Sure, and opening up, you know, those new nursing staff for 23B, and again, you know, recruiting into those positions. It's hard to get senior people. You often get junior people. We have made a bit of a nursing commitment to employ junior staff. You know, we never used to. We used to say, okay, so we'll only take people who have had lots of experience in paediatrics, and the major disadvantage of that was that it was hard to recruit people. But also, if we get people who are junior who do very well, then they're with us for a long time, and you know, we can grow those people into nurse specialist roles.
It's quite a complicated role. It's not just go in and change bed and reassure the parents and walk out. There is a lot more to it than just an average nursing role. That's why it's nice to retain senior staff with experience, and it's reassuring as, you know, a parent knowing that the person looking after your child is competent to do that job and not flustered because they're new. So
and the other thing that is kind of good, looking at the glass half full, is that we've had quite an expansion of nurse specialist and nurse practitioner roles. And so that does give people something to aim for and to stick around in the department. And so, you know, I think that's been a real positive thing, in fact. Yeah. I mean, these things, they wax and wane a bit, as you know, you're probably well aware. And you do go through a period where you have a lot of junior staff, and then obviously those people, if they stick around with you, you end up with people who have been there for longer. There's a lot of components to the system, and you know, when I first started doing this role, I thought I'd just get everything right. But you can work away at something and then find that something else isn't going as well as you liked. So getting everything right at the same time is a real challenge. And the ward is an issue, I agree.
When you said there was an expansion, is there been an increase in the number of nurse practitioners on the ward?
We have an extra nurse practitioner on the ward, and we have an extra nurse practitioner who's currently training on the ward, we have a number of, 1.5, I think, FTEs of nurse specialists who are not necessarily involved in the ward, they're involved in other duties in the department.
So does that mean there'll be 3 nurse practitioners?
Well, there are 3 nurse practitioners. It doesn't necessarily mean there'll be 3 nurse practitioners on the ward, no. Yeah.
So that's 1 extra?
Yeah.
That would, what do you think he's doing? Are you satisfied?
Yeah, recruitment's an issue. I think somebody said, why don't we just get more money? And that's what I always say to Emma. It's my standard response. I think that is part of the solution, but I think the other issue is retention and recruiting people who are going to stay. And that always is going to be an issue in a smallish country. But there are things that we can do to make life more appealing for people. And in terms of the cancellations and things, yes, I definitely do think we can make that better. And I think we will make it better over the next 12 months. Probably not perfect, but certainly better than it is. Because that's the thing that really, I think we can manage the surgical side of things, As long as Kirsten looks before she crosses the road. But apart from some sort of terrible disaster, I think we can manage the surgical side of things. The issue really is that gets me is the cancellation stuff, because it's so difficult for families and it's so difficult for staff. And so I think that is the thing that we do want to solve over the next 12 months. And I can see us doing it. I don't think we necessarily need the ICU build to be able to do that, because I think realistically those beds are 2 years away. There's a business case to get through, then they've got to start building.
What is the ICU build? Is it a whole new building or?
No, it's filling in the atrium. The atrium of the Starship is going to be filled in, and the ICU is going to be pushed back, and there's going to be how many more beds? I want to say 10.
We're still landing the number, but if we said, at least 6, and we're in a very early part of the design process now. You sort of do a concept design, and then you go out and procure a team to do a fully worked up design. So we're just at the very early stages of that first bit. I was just sort of thinking about your question around what's the thing that will make a difference. I think planning and having an eye to the future and thinking about for the remaining life of the building that is Starship, what do we need to do to make the very best use of the space we have, knowing what the needs of our population are, thinking about the things like the longer lengths of stay in ICU and the much greater survival rates and all of what that means for the service. So we're quite an active part of planning for ADHB, thinking about what our ICU needs are as well as theatre needs and all other aspects of the system.
And there's a real need for advocacy. I guess the only thing that I'd say is it's really important that we do that at the right time, and it's I've been off to meet the Minister with Rob, the previous CEO, and I think we need to continue that sort of exposure, and having voices from people is important, but it's also important that that's kind of hits the nail on the head, if you like, at a time when it's needed.
So it's probably quite a nice way to round this up, because actually today Kate actually invited the Minister to this meeting, and she got a letter back from him today.
So he's invited me to meet with him, and I've spoken to Tom about it, so we will arrange a time to go down and meet with him in Wellington. So I think, we've got the recording from today, we've got the compiled questions. Between Tom and I, we're going to have a pretty good idea of the sorts of things we need to be putting to David Clark in a concise format. So we can carry this conversation on. Julie and I had a discussion before we started just about if there are any other questions, or if you leave tonight, something else comes up, to let us know. But we'll also communicate when that meeting's going to be. and obviously then the outcomes of that meeting. We will also distribute the information sheet that we put together, and again that will be comprised based on the questions that you've put forward and then the general discussion from today. That will be on the website and also made available at the hospital, and then obviously we'll make the video available as well.
Great.
And I just want to finish before saying a special thank you to Emma and Tom. Some of you won't know, I also have a heart child who's now 36, I can remember her age. And I consider myself very, very privileged to, one, have had a heart child born in Auckland, and have had the service that we get in New Zealand. When I look at some of the other countries, sure, if I was rich and well off in the States, I might have got as good a service as Jess has had here, but I even doubt that. And if I was in that socio-economic group that I'm born into, I probably wouldn't have. So I sincerely thank Tom, who's been around for almost all of Jess's life. I remember Tom when he first came as a very young man and very sweet. A different coloured hair. I've got some photographs. And Emma, not quite so long, and a different perspective, but I think we are incredibly lucky in New Zealand, and you with your heart kids are very, very privileged and lucky to have the service that we have. I now know that even more so after being on the Fontan as a patient rep on the Fontan steering committee. I've seen some of the statistics, and we're really lucky. So.